Welcome to the Devy Devotional Podcast, a show devoted to college prospect evaluation with a fantasy football focus. With your hosts, John Arrington, Aaron Wilcox, and Andy Starr. This podcast brings you actionable strategies and player-driven analysis for your Devy, C2C, and dynasty leagues. Let's dive in.
Let's dive into Cornerstone ranks. Welcome into the Devy Devotional, where we stay devoted to Devy. I'm your host, John Arrington, and tonight, like I said, we're going to be doing some Cornerstone talk, talking about your 2025, 26, and 27 classes. And I thought honestly that we had been doing this. We had talked about this more recently than we have, but I went back and it really looks like the last time we truly did like a deep dive on our Cornerstone ranks was in November. We did a little bit of a talk about it in March, but doing a deep dive into the Devy Devotional Cornerstone ranks was last November, which, I guess when we're talking rank rookies and everything else that we do, here you kind of get lost in the shuffle, but I can't do it alone. I would say my favorite, but this time we got both, so I guess you guys are both my favorite co-hosts. We got both back. Both co-hosts are here. It's been a little bit since we've had them, but we're happy to have Andy Starr and Aaron Wilcox. Andy, how are you doing, buddy? Missed you last week.
Yeah, you keep saying like, "Oh, long time no see" and stuff like that. I missed 1 week. I mean, I know that it's been a couple spots here and there this summer, but yeah, we've been camping. I think I had a guys trip one weekend where I got I couldn't come back on a Tuesday and do this. Is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I mean, it's summer. And the thing with college football right now is like, man, we're in the doldrums, right? Like we are in the dog days of summer, as far as like the news cycle is concerned. So we're doing our best here. This does feel like a good week to get these Cornerstone rankings out. But we're just one more week closer to college football, which we can't be mad about that.
Yeah, Aaron first brought it up and said, hey, maybe we should talk about Cornerstone. And like I said, I kind of felt like we had just done it. But I guess, I don't know, we talk about all these players so often. Maybe that's what it is. But we haven't truly dove in. But Aaron, it was your idea. And, obviously you're excited to do it. But what brought it into your mind?
Yeah, well, I guess I was even thinking of this as expanding it to even like older guys at the NFL level too. But if we want to just focus in on the Cornerstone, those are the young guys, right? The NFL young guys that are upcoming, and then the college prospects. Let's do it. Like, this is super fun. And at the end of the day, I just love that valuation in dynasty leagues, Devy leagues, C2C leagues, with the NFL interacting with the college side. I understand sometimes it is hard to do those straight up swaps, but there are times when it works in leagues. And it's just a awesome, fun thing to be able to just discuss comparing those values and seeing, are there some upcoming guys in college that can rival some of these young, upcoming, ascending players at the NFL level? So yeah, I'm always just excited for this talk and, kind of ranking it out and comparing where do we have a few of these guys in comparison to each other.
Yeah, what's funny is that was, I don't know if Andy remembers, but that was actually the pod, the one in November, where he brought on Felix Sharp as a surprise guest for us. And then we talked about some of the players that we liked and didn't like and all that kind of stuff. But I remember one of the big things was Bryce Underwood. Well, last November, our idea of Bryce Underwood was probably even different than it is now. I bet since we last discussed this, we have a lot to get into, is what I should probably say. So, unless Andy, are there any surprise guests that I need to know about? Anything going on here?
Yep, he's backstage right now. I was going to wait till later. It's Felix. He's back. No, I'm just kidding. We got nobody.
Don't scare me like that. Oh, man. All right, so well, look, why don't we go ahead and dive back in? I actually thought about, it's been a while, but I actually thought about bringing back guess the guy for tonight, just to have some fun. But I don't know, we might do it in the future. We've kind of obviously gotten away from it, and yet here we are. We've still been doing our pods, so something changed in the process where we forgot how to stick to a timeline. But I guess why don't we go ahead and just dive in, Aaron? It was your idea. You said you came up with a bunch of lists. I mean, honestly, if you want to stick to, Cornerstone, like I said it, you can. If you want to go older, I don't mind. We can do whatever the hell we want. It's our pod, man.
Yeah, no, I do have some options that are young that fit those cornerstone type of qualifications. So why don't we go right away with some young guys here? I think, what is it, 25, 26, 27. So I think this guy might actually have been 20 to 24. But for the most part, yes, I've stuck to definitely the last,
Close enough.
class, the future ones, right? And I'm going to go with some big names, okay, to start with. So get out your keep, trade, cut rankings here for these. This might be challenging. Jeremiah Smith, Ohio State wide receiver, probably the best college player right now, right, for Devy purposes. And then we have Tet McMillan, had a very strong season last year for the Carolina Panthers. And then Malik Neighbors, coming off of injury, but a stud at the NFL level when healthy or if healthy for the New York Giants. So Jeremiah Smith, Tet McMillan, Malik Neighbors. Who wants it first?
I'll go. This
You
is
sound
tough.
so excited.
This is a tough one. All right, I'm just gonna say what my gut tells me right off the get-go, and I'll try and talk my way through it as I say it. My gut is telling me to take Tet McMillan, Tetaroa, T-Mac, number one. So keep whatever you want to call it, but that's who I would rank number one over Jeremiah Smith, just slightly. And I'm gonna take Jeremiah Smith at number two. And it pains me to say Neighbors is third, but he is coming off that ACL. I know that that's not necessarily a injury that we're too concerned about, long term, especially at the wide receiver position. We've seen guys like Keenan Allen and a few other guys just come back from multiple ACL injuries and do just fine. But, it's still a concern. So I like Tetaroa McMillan. I think that he had a really solid season for Carolina last year. I think he's only going to build on that. I think he's already kind of locked in as a top 12 dynasty wide receiver for the foreseeable future. Jeremiah Smith is still, it's still unknown. I think if you asked people 3 years ago, is Marvin Harrison Jr. going to be a top 12 dynasty receiver for the next decade? A lot of people would say, yeah, probably. And it's not going that way so far. So a lot of things can happen in the NFL, even if you get drafted in the first 5 picks of the NFL draft. Like, you still have to go out there and do it at the end of the day, which I'm not saying Jeremiah Smith's not going to do it. I'm just saying there's a lot more unknown there. We've already seen Tetaroa McMillan put a solid season down in his rookie year in like a kind of a subpar offense at that. So his arrow is only pointing up. And then Neighbors, like, he's there right with everybody else, obviously. But I'm just going to take the upside with Jeremiah Smith and kind of, shield myself, I guess, from the risk of re-injury or maybe just falling behind on the depth chart a little bit, or not necessarily the depth chart, but like the target share a little bit with Neighbors as he comes back from that ACL injury from last year.
Man, I feel like we did a disservice with this one. I don't know if we lost Aaron for a second or what, but or actually he just said something in the chat. But I feel like we should have saved this one for last or something. Like this is very difficult, and I don't know. Maybe he was thinking like they're such good players, it doesn't really matter. You're not gonna. I don't think you're ever gonna be upset regardless of which one you end up with. And maybe that's the point. But if you're sitting here trying to do it, what is Malik Neighbors? Malik Neighbors is what you want Jeremiah Smith and Tet McMillan to turn into, at least as far as like what he did in year one before his injury. You want Tet McMillan and Jeremiah Smith to become that. Now, Tet McMillan had a great year. He did not have a Malik Neighbors level year, but he did have a great year. Tet has already proven it at the NFL level as well, and but then you have like a godly prospect with Jeremiah Smith. It's so tough, but I think I go back to I understand the injury and everything, but I really go back to with Malik Neighbors. Like, we've already seen it, we already know that he can do it, and with such a young guy with no history of major injuries or anything like that, I'm not going to hold one ACL tear. I'm over here like Progressive. I got accident forgiveness, on here, and we're going to say, we're going to give him one ACL tear forgiveness, and we're going to say that it's Malik Neighbors at one, because he's shown the upside. He's paired with a studly quarterback. We already know the situation with Jackson Dart and Neighbors. Ted McMillan still has the Bryce Young, question marks, even though I love Ted. I love his abilities. And we have no idea where Jeremiah Smith will end up. He very well could be drafted by the Raiders next year, by the Jets next year. I mean, some of these poor teams that, are you going to be overly excited about that? We like Fernando Mendoza. Do we love Fernando Mendoza as an NFL QB? I don't know. I don't know that we can say that. And so I guess that's the downside. Obviously, there are going to be upside, and there could be upside with Jeremiah Smith. He could end up in an amazing spot, and you're all said and done. But I think we talked about it with the rookies this year. We're already kind of running out of spots where, like, there's a barren, wasteland, except for Miami would be the only one that you could truly really think of. But Miami desperately needs a quarterback. So, I don't think they're going to be going Jeremiah Smith at 101. So, all that being said, I really don't like having to make this decision, but I think, like, I guess we have to see if I actually did it when, if this was ever actually a choice. But I'm going to say Malik Neighbors won. Oh, man, I don't want to do it. I'm going to... All right, I'm changing my mind on the fly. I'm going to go Malik Neighbors 1, Jeremiah Smith 2, Ted McMillan 3. I really don't think I should do that, but it just feels so wrong to put Jeremiah Smith at 3. It just does not feel right.
I get it. And I mean, the reason I started with this is just such big names, fun to talk about. A little bit more exciting than me going over here and saying, well, let's compare Jeremiah Koger to, Malcolm Simmons versus Trey Harris. It's like, I don't know. But, you guys make some good arguments, both of you. I do have to be the down guy, the guy who's a little bit more cautious with the Malik Neighbors take, because he's had some significant injuries, right? Partial hip labrum tear in his history, hip flexor strain, shoulder injury, and then now ACL tear, but not just a straightforward rehab. They had to go back in there and clean up that surgery. Cyclops lesion, scar tissue within the knee causing stiffness after surgery. So, that just concerns me. Cyclops lesion, saw one of those in the clinic this week. Interesting. But yeah, no, it's one of those things that just kind of scares me. And not taking away from the player himself, right? The player, if healthy, when healthy, like I said earlier, very, very much in contention there for the number 1 spot on this list. But I'm going to go similar to Andy, same grouping, Ted McMillan number 1, Jeremiah Smith number 2, such a high upside player, young, fresh, not no injury history, and then Malik Neighbors at number 3. I think there could be some concerns here this year with his health. From a talent standpoint, though, he is still remarkable. These are very high-end assets. So that is my rationale. That's my ranking. So keep Ted McMillan, I guess trade Jeremiah Smith, and cut Malik Neighbors in this circumstance.
Yeah, so, for HIPAA reasons, he's not allowed to say who he's worked on, but obviously we can tell who Aaron is working on here, in the office. No, so, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, all I was going to say was, no, I do not work with any professional athletes at my clinic here. Not football ones, at least, that's for sure. But I was going to say, one of my PT classmates actually was a PT/athletic trainer the last few years for the Indianapolis Colts. So that was kind of cool to see her out there for them.
That's awesome. No, I was just joking. Obviously, the timeline wasn't right and everything, but it's just funny that you saw one of those, what was it, Cyclops lesions?
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, is it named appropriately? Is it because it looks like a cyclops or something? Or
Yeah. Basically, on imaging, it does kind of look like a little dot, or yeah, kind of like a little eye type of deal.
interesting. All right. Yeah, I mean, I completely see the downside, and I mean, obviously, you guys are bullying me here, so I have to kind of defend myself, but I do see the downside, but I think. Well, I mean, obviously, anyone. I don't think anyone's ever going to argue against Jeremiah Smith just because of what he's done in college. But because we've already seen it in the NFL, would you agree with me that Neighbors has the most upside right now?
Yep. He is the most boomer bust of that group.
Sure. So, and I think when you're talking about three studs, I'm looking at who can give me the most upside. And so that's why I lean Neighbors there. I completely understand the downside. Obviously, he's losing he is losing ranks in dynasty ranks right now. Like he's dropping spots in ADP and everything. So the consensus is definitely agreeing with you guys here, but I just really struggled to. What I saw from Neighbors is just like next tier. It's like the closest thing I've seen to Jamar Chase since Chase really entered the league, and yeah, you couldn't pay me to trade away Jamar Chase. So that's how I'm feeling about that one. But hopefully this next one won't be as difficult. But I don't know. It was fun. It made for good discussion. So maybe it will be.
Yeah, I'll hit you guys with the next one there. We'll switch positions. We'll do something else than wide receivers. Let's do Ahmad Hardy, Missouri running back. Bashal Tootin for the Jaguars, and R.J. Harvey for the Denver Broncos. And then maybe we'll start this time. Well, if either of you feel strongly right off the bat, you can go. But Ahmad Hardy, Bashal Tootin, R.J. Harvey.
I mean, honestly, I feel pretty convicted on this one. I think it sucks that we're starting off with two injuries. To players that are, that we're looking at here. But I think that for me, R.J. Harvey was never really a player that I was a big fan of. He was always kind of an afterthought. I have 0% in Dynasty. Not because I hated the player or anything like that, but just because someone was always taking him before me. And then, people started pushing him up into the first round, and that was never going to happen. Obviously, he's fallen off. I actually think he's to the point where he's a buy in Dynasty, just because, people are so torn on. You have people saying that Jonah Coleman's going to be the show, and my feelings of Jonah Coleman. So I'm like, if we're comparing Jonah Coleman and R.J. Harvey, give me R.J. Harvey. But if we're talking about R.J. Harvey and Bajal Tootin, now that's a different story. I have a ridiculous amount of Bajal Tootin, at least 30 something percent, 35% in Dynasty, because I did go out of my way to draft him at 204, 205, 206, wherever I did last year. And nothing is truly changed here, as far as I'm concerned, except for they got rid of the starting running back. Like they said, hey, Bajal is, it's essentially your game. Now they've talked about mixing in LaQuinn Allen on third downs and 2-minute drills and things like that. But for the most part, I think it's going to be the Bajal Tootin show with, some other players mixed in for, breathers and whatnot. So I think the fact that we've already seen it at a smaller level, the fact that I was such a fan as a prospect and everything, he's already has the draft capital, he already has everything else. We got to put Bajal Tootin at 1. Now we get Ahmad Hardy at 2. And then, like I said, R.J. Harvey, never a big fan. But as I'm saying that and as I'm putting him at 3, I still think he's a buy in Dynasty and somebody that I would be interested in looking at. But it's going to take the right team. Like, you're not buying him. Obviously, it's going to take the right team. It's going to take the right price, all that kind of stuff. So if you're in a team that desperately needs running back help and you're able to get them for a third-round pick or something, like, yeah, I would, or maybe even like a late second or something, yeah, I would take R.J. Harvey there.
Yeah, I think I'm going to pretty much co-sign the entire ranking there. Tootin, yeah, they brought in Chris Rodriguez for like a ridiculous contract. I know that the talking heads of Dynasty wanted to make people believe that meant that he was going to get some huge amount of the market share when it comes to the Jaguars rushing. To me, I don't see it that way. I feel like they've invested, not a super high draft pick, but like draft capital in Tootin. He's gotten playing time and succeeded when he's gotten it last year as a rookie. I think he's gonna, do well to build on that season, and I'm not worried about Chris Rodriguez getting the majority of those touches. So yeah, I have him at 1. Yeah, Ahmad Hardy's just so tough. Getting shot this offseason. So, it's hard to project how someone can recover from that. By all accounts, it seems like he should be good to go, but it's just not an injury that you can really look back and say like, oh, this is what happened when this guy got shot, because nobody gets shot the same way, unfortunately. So yeah, we hope Hardy's going to be great. He obviously had an excellent season last year, hoping to build off that. I've got my concerns because I do think that his teammate Jamal Roberts played pretty well, and if there's any sort of hiccups getting ready for the season, Missouri's going to be more than happy to lean on Roberts to pick up that load, and he's going to do great in that spot. So there is some risk there, but with RJ Harvey, I'm with you. He just he's kind of undersized for one, from a stature standpoint, not necessarily a weight standpoint. He's kind of a gimmicky running back. The Broncos obviously brought J.K. Dobbins back because I feel like that's a sign that they're saying, hey, we don't feel like anybody we have on our team right now is really somebody capable of carrying a full load. So yeah, for me, Harvey's always going to be like a Darren Sproles is like his ceiling. He's never going to be like the RB1 for a team. He's always just going to kind of be a gadgety guy that might pop off and have a few good weeks throughout the season for you, which is good to have, but it's never going to be somebody that you're like really excited about for years and years.
Okay, I tend to agree with your guys' analysis on RJ Harvey. Like there could be something there if there's some injuries or otherwise, but it seems like the Broncos don't really want to feature him, so I would put him at the last spot. May actually differ on the first and second, but I have those guys so close, like between Bashal Tootin and Ahmad Hardy. I do think that Ahmad Hardy could be a better running back, but there's just the uncertainty there, right? And he's not at the NFL level yet. I mean, from a talent standpoint, I think I'm still going Ahmad Hardy 1, despite the issue this offseason. It seems like he's recovered really well from that gunshot wound, kind of a quirky, unfortunate thing that happened to him, but shouldn't be a long-term issue. Though he'll probably cede some work here again to Jamal Roberts. Like, that's a good second running back that Missouri has there. But Ahmad Hardy, he showed a lot of really good things this last year. I think he's a solid back. And Bashal Tootin, as much as, he has some interesting aspects to his profile, I've never truly bought in. I think he's always been a fine sleeper, but they also brought in a guy who has a lot of familiarity within that coaching staff, Chris Rodriguez. Not that they paid him a ton of money. They didn't need to, right? He wasn't this sort of like superstar free agent by any means, right? He's kind of a journeyman, but the coaching staff likes him. The coaching staff wants to give him some touches if healthy, which I think that's kind of a question going into the season, but Rodriguez, I think he's just going to muddy the waters there enough, and I think there's just enough, LaQuint Allen trying to take some of the passing down work. That could be a committee, but it is a backfield that is very much interesting. Bashal Tootin could take it and run this year, but is he a long-term back for dynasty purposes? I'm skeptical. So I'll go Hardy actually at 1, then Bashal Tootin right behind him at 2, and then RJ Harvey 3.
Yeah, I can't really truly argue with it. Basically the way I was looking at it is with the shooting, it makes it a little more difficult, obviously, but even more importantly, the way that I look at it is when they're still in college. Obviously, we know there's always the chance for injury, setbacks, whatever coaching changes, whatever it is that could drastically change how we view a player. And so I generally give players a tiered drop for like when they're still in college, when I'm comparing them to players in the NFL. And so right now Ahmad Hardy is a Devy Beth tier 2 player. tier 2 running back, I should say, and Basil Tuden is a Beth tier 3 running back. And so I'm like I'm basically saying I'm going to put them in the same exact tier, and if I'm doing that, then I'm taking the guy that's already in the NFL. If he still ended up a tier ahead or something, then obviously I'd take Hardy. That being said, I don't think that I would really be mad about having either. I would be pretty mad compared to those two. I'd be pretty mad if I had RJ Harvey. I almost want to say it's like 1A, 1B, and then C, or I'm sorry, 1A, 1B, and then 3 is how I should have said it.
Yeah, that's fair for sure. Let's hit you guys with the quarterback question next, okay? And we'll go with Cam Ward, Tennessee Titans, coming off of kind of an underwhelming season, but now they're reloading that wide receiver core for Tennessee. Got Fernando Mendoza going to the Raiders, which you think, kind of a mess situation, but they're starting to rebuild some weapons. Good running back there, good tight end play for Mendoza. We got Arch Manning, who should be set up for some success here at Texas this year, but there's questions. People are kind of all over the place on him. I think overall as a podcast, we very much like Arch, but there's people out there on Twitter saying, he's way down in the ranks and that he's, I don't know. It's just craziness when it's talking about Arch Manning. People think they're high on him, having him as a sleeper. It's like, no, there's plenty of us who actually think he's good out here as a player. But that's the three I'm going to pick there. Cam Ward, Fernando Mendoza, Arch Manning. You guys have some fun.
Just to be clear, you're talking about the sleeper 54 overall, 54th overall in Devy QB, right? That's the player you're talking about, Arch Manning.
Ooh.
Not my rankings, somebody else's rankings. A little inside joke, but reach out to us if you want info. DM us, and I'll talk to you about it in the DMs.
All right. Well, here's how I'd have it. All right, because I think about it from a prospect standpoint. I had Cam Ward as a better prospect going into the NFL than I did Fernando Mendoza. Now I've seen Cam Ward put an NFL season together, and it did not look good at all. QBR in the 30s, only 15 touchdowns, passing to 7 interceptions. It's hard to find like a game where you can look at and say like, okay, he's putting it together. Things can only go up from here, but they're bringing in Carnell Tate. I don't know if that, if that's like the end all be all, like we're going to solve Cam Ward by giving him more receivers to throw to. I think there is more to it than that, obviously. But I just don't know if Mendoza's like guaranteed to be better than Cam Ward, because Mendoza's always a guy that I just felt was like, his ceiling is going to be like a Ryan Tannehill type player for, where it might take him 10 years before he has a QB1 season. So all this to say is my number one is going to be Arch, because at least I can feel confident somewhat knowing that, maybe he puts together such a great college season this year with all these receivers that he's got, everything Texas has done in the transfer portal, to where, he'll be a solid number one overall pick and somebody that I can feel confident about next year. So I'll have him at 1. And then I think I'm just gonna put Cam Ward at 2. I'm gonna put him there because I just don't know if I believe in Mendoza that much. But honestly, between Ward and Mendoza, it's like a coin flip for me. I'm not excited about either of them. I'll put Cam Ward at 2 simply because I thought of him higher coming into the NFL than I did Mendoza, and he is getting a little bit of a boost on that Tennessee offense with some of the guys coming in. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm not very high on either of those guys, but Arch number 1 is a no-brainer for me.
All right, man. We're gonna sound like Mendoza haters here, but I think yeah, I gotta go Arch number 1. I mean, he's already hit the thresholds that I'm looking for as a true sophomore. Going into his true junior year here. I think he's already hit that stuff. Like he's already. Oh no, I'm sorry. true junior, because he was a red shirt, right? So okay, so going into his true senior year, but having only played for 2 seasons, I'm looking at it and saying I I'm already seeing what I like to see out of Arch, for the big time throws, for the intended air yards. But then you have the rushing ability, which we haven't really talked about with any of these other players. Mendoza just doesn't really have it. He I think you've Aaron, you've kind of talked about how he can get out of the pocket, he can scramble if he needs to, but I don't think he's a rusher. Arch Manning is a rusher. Like, if anything, like he's probably closer to. I mean, I don't want to say this as a passer, as a player, but he's closer to Daniel Jones as a rusher than like any Manning has ever been. But then obviously he has the Manning passing ability and name on top of that and everything. So I could easily see Arch Manning going out there and being QB1 overall in Dynasty. I cannot see that with Cam Ward. I cannot see that with Fernando Mendoza. I think Mendoza will be a long-term quarterback in the NFL. Whether that's as a starter or not, we'll have to wait and see. But, I think even when he's starting, you're talking about QB 12, 14, 15, whatever. Not overly exciting, not overly terrible. More of a super flex kind of guy. Cam Ward had the promises of possibly being that QB1 overall kind of type, kind of player. I think we saw in year one at the very least, like that's probably never going to happen. But he still has some upside. I think, like I have Cam Ward and Mendoza for very different reasons, essentially tied as prospects. Like they were so close, but for very different reasons. You have the safety of Mendoza, you had the upside, but with the clear downside of Ward. Since we've already seen Ward kind of flame out, I think I'm going to go ahead and put him at 3. But I'm not real. I'm with Andy where I'm not overly excited about Mendoza. I didn't draft any of him in any of my rookie drafts. I have no intentions of like trying to trade for him or anything until his value most likely goes down as the season progresses and stuff. He's not seeing the field. They've already told us he's not even going to play this year, but yet every analyst still says, "Oh yeah, give it 4 or 5 games with Kirk, and then they're going to go to Mendoza." And I'm like, they've literally told you they don't want him starting. So I don't understand why we're just basing things off of that. Kirk Cousins obviously a very viable quarterback. Even if it hasn't been amazing over the past year or so coming back from injury. I think you're not going to lose the value with Mendoza that Ward will probably lose. So I'm going to say the downside is there with Ward and put him at 3, but there's a chance that Ward takes a step forward and then he's actually closer to Arch than I'm giving him credit for when it's all said and done. So I don't necessarily feel great about the rankings, but I would just say I feel safer having Mendoza on my team, like value-wise, for future value than I do with Ward. Ward could go to 0. I don't think Mendoza's ever going to go to 0.
Yeah. Well, I tend to agree with the safety aspect with Mendoza, and I'm ranking Fernando Mendoza 1 from this list. He is the top guy. You got to keep him. And so, I mean, the guy that went right away in the NFL draft this year. Raiders obviously want to build around him. They're going to protect him. They're going to put him out there when he's ready. I don't care what they say about, Kirk Cousins is the man. They don't draft a guy that early just so they can write out Kirk Cousins for, the entirety of the year, unless the team is just in disarray and it's just too risky to expose him and put bad habits out there for Mendoza. So I do think he'll get some opportunity this year when the matchup is right and or when he is looking ready. Again, I think he has enough weapons there. The wide receiver core is very much lacking. When you're trotting out Trey Tucker, Jalen Naylor, Jack Besh, Dante Thornton, Malik Benson, that is bad. But you also have a couple of very, very good tight ends, especially Brock Bowers. But Michael Mayer is no slouch. Ashton Genty, they're going to feed him. Mike Washington comes in. Some capable, backup touches there at the running back position. I kind of like what they're overall trying to do, rebuild that offensive line. Colton Miller coming back. I think there's just enough there where they're going to keep building up that team. And long term, there is the safety, like John was saying, with Fernando Mendoza. I actually don't view Arch Manning as that level of safety. I mean, he could really just not progress at all this year at Texas. I'm not saying I predict that, but I think that's very much in the realm of possibility. Maybe he doesn't even end up being a first round pick. And then you're just, you're holding not much. Like you said, there's some value insulation with Mendoza, even to a degree with Cam Ward. But I do agree that Cam Ward could be more volatile this year if he has another year with higher levels of turnovers. Yeah, that's not going to bode well for his future, right? It could be a make or break year for Cam Ward. They're in Tennessee. They're trying to surround him with weapons. They had a lot of upgrades here. I like what Tennessee is trying to build from a wide receiver core. We'll see if Cam Ward can actually pull it off. So I guess the question is, do I put Ward at 2 or 3? I do feel as though Cam Ward should still be at 2 because he's made it to the NFL level. First round pick. He's has a good amount of starting experience with a team that's really building around him, but that's a volatile spot as well. So it's kind of a reluctant 2 for Ward, then Arch Manning at 3. For the record, I do like Arch Manning. He's my QB1 right now in college. So it's not necessarily that I hate the guy, but I do think that there's a little bit more safety with the guys who've actually made it and got some jobs lined up there at the NFL level.
All right. Well, we helped no one on that one because we were all over the place. That there's no consensus here. I will just say, going with the safety. You're talking about a Manning. I feel like Manning could have a down year and still be 101, or at least like 101 through 105 in the NFL draft. Like, I just almost feel like that's locked in no matter what.
But why didn't he declare this year is my question. It's such a down class, like Ty Simpson getting first round draft capital. It should have been a lock for Arch Manning.
They were very clear from day one, and they being their family, his family, were very clear from day one that he was not coming out until he played a certain amount of games. And, that's not going to number. There's people saying that he might not even come out in this upcoming draft class because they just want him to, fulfill his, his enrollment and make as much money in college and all that. I think that's a little wild unless he truly does have a down year or something like that. Then I guess maybe. But I have a feeling he'll be coming out this next year. I have a feeling Texas is going to do very well. I have a feeling he's going to do very well. He was a completely different player in the second half of last season than he was in the first half. And that was with some solid, defenses and stuff that he was playing. So it wasn't like it was just, we're going up against, some random team or the Bowling Green or whoever. Like, no, he was playing legit teams and he was still doing really well. Cam Ward, I follow the Titans pretty closely, and everything I've seen is that, like, while they're highlighting Carnell Tate and how great he looks and all that kind of stuff, a lot of it's been talked about how Cam Ward does not look amazing. And that's not great when you're talking about running around in shorts and 7-on-7s and stuff like that. It's not great when your quarterback hasn't taken a step forward in year 2. And unfortunately, I feel like he kind of maxed out in college, and people were expecting him to take a step forward once he got to the NFL, and that's not really, necessarily happening here. So I kind of stick to my guns here where, like, I think, yes, I give the upside. I see what could happen with Cam Ward, but I think he could easily be Will Levis 2.0 as far as, like, getting usurped and value and all that kind of stuff. And next thing you know, he's literally at 0, compared to Mendoza, who's going to always kind of be that QB like 15 or whatever, and then Arch, who's going to come in really hot once he actually gets here.
Those are fair points, for sure. Any rebuttal, Andy, or are we moving on?
No, I would just say, like, from the safety standpoint, you're right. Like, Mendoza is probably the best chance to, have a similar value a year from now than he does right now. But I would just say with Arch, a year from now, his ceiling is people are arguing if he's the 101 over Jeremiah Smith. That's like a best case scenario, obviously. Whereas like Mendoza, a year from now, people are going to be, I would say his value is probably going to be at or near where it's at right now, maybe a little bit lower, especially if he doesn't see as much playing time as some people think, or maybe he doesn't see any playing time at all. So a lot can happen. I just don't see it that like he's going to be vaulted up very much higher than where he's at right now, barring something amazing happening for him, which it just doesn't feel like this team right now is built for that to happen. And I'm with you guys on Cam Ward. Like I said, it was kind of a coin toss between him and Fernando Mendoza, because at the end of the day, I don't feel like Mendoza's ever going to be that good. And I've said it a lot throughout the rookie draft process. I think he's a fine NFL quarterback, but like for fantasy, he's always just going to be like a high-end QB2. That just feels like his ceiling for me, and I could be dead wrong, but that's just how I view it and how I see it playing out. And, it's good to have those guys on your team, but at the end of the day, like the value of that in terms of like dynasty value is never going to be, that significant.
I'd appreciate the feedback, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. Now you've given us a bunch of interpositional keep trade cuts here. Do you have any others? Do you have any mixed positionals here?
Ooh. Yeah, I can get you a mixed positional here in a second. I did have one more here that I think is kind of interesting within the position itself, and then we can do some mixed for sure. Cam Coleman, wide receiver, transferring in from Auburn to Texas. DeCorian Moore, wide receiver at Oregon. And then we have Luther Burden, who is for the Chicago Bears. And people are loving the Burden upside this year, right? That breakout opportunity. DJ Moore is gone. But DeCorian Moore, second-year guy, flashed as a freshman, big opportunity there. People expect him to be a top 5 wide receiver in college, or at least for Devy purposes. And then Cam Coleman is already there, right? He's, maybe question some of the production there at Auburn. Terrible situation, quarterback play, whatever the case is. Getting a nice upgrade. You guys like Arch, obviously. How high do you have Cam Coleman, and where do you rank Coleman, Moore, and Burden?
All right, I'll go first. All right, I'll just say Burden is always going to be number 3 on this list. His yards per route run, it's not a stat that like is sticky for like his role in the NFL. I don't think that like just because he had a very high yards per route run in his rookie season that it's going to just automatically mean his production is going to double next year. That's not how that stat works. It's also, not typical that a guy has under 700 yards in his rookie season while being a draft pick in the first 2 rounds to just turn around and rattle off, several seasons of 1,000 yards. That doesn't happen very often either. Not since like Devontae Adams has something like that happened. So it's possible. I just, we've been on Luther Burden for years now. Like the play style doesn't necessarily translate. What we saw in college doesn't seem like it's going to be successful in the NFL. He's kind of like a underneath, slot receiver, and especially in his junior season, he's getting out targeted by Theo Weiss, which is just not something you want to see, obviously. So I'm putting him at 3. I am a noted Cam Coleman, I guess, hater, even though I don't hate him. I still think that he's like really one of the better wide receivers coming out next year. And it's funny because the reason that I don't like him is because of yards per route run, which I just told you that stat, we shouldn't overvalue it. Well, I'm overvaluing it the other way by saying that he's not reaching those thresholds. And despite him having like a really high market share on Auburn, he never really hit those yards per route run thresholds, which, that leads me to believe he's more of like an Alec A.O. Manor type player where, maybe he's a really good wide receiver on a bad team, but it's hard to really tell whether or not that is just because, he's the best wide receiver in a group of, not very good wide receivers. Which should have been the case on Auburn last year because they had some good guys on there, Eric Singleton and obviously Cam Coleman, but there was just nobody that was able to throw them the ball. So but then the other guy is Decorian Moore, who like I'm not like necessarily very stout on as like this guaranteed lock as a wide receiver one either. Like he had a decent market share as a freshman, but nothing crazy, and obviously not nearly as good as Cam Coleman's market share as a true freshman. And his yards per route run was above 2, which I like to see, but at the same time, it's not like amazing either. He's getting, Jeremiah McClellan is out receiving him, Kenyon Sadiq, Jamari Johnson, all these guys. So I'm gonna say Cam Coleman number 1, but I'm gonna just put a lot of asterisks at it that I'm still, and maybe I'm coming around on Cam Coleman, because even when I'm doing like mock drafts, I find myself drafting him in C2C startups as like the 106 or 7. But just because there's really not a lot else there aside from Coleman. So, yeah, I don't think Decorian Moore is there yet to have me put him above Cam Coleman. So that's where I'm at with that. But Luther Burden is like the no-brainer number 3. I think that's the takeaway here.
I just realized I think I spelled his name wrong, Decorian Moore. I don't know. Just imagine it's spelled right. But I'm struggling with this one because I said on, what was it, the last pod that we had, or was it the pod before that, where I said that I was lower on Decorian Moore than most. And so this one I'm struggling with because this is the easiest one that we've had for sure. It's Cam Coleman by by a mile at number 1. He's the closest thing that we have to a Jeremiah Smith. He's not Jeremiah Smith, but he's the closest thing I have in Devy Beth to Jeremiah Smith. He is my only. I'm looking at it. Oh, no, that's not true. Okay. I was going to say he's my only tier 1 wide receiver, but that's actually not true. So, but he's definitely the second best wide receiver in Devy Beth, and even by a little bit of a margin there, going over the third wide receiver. Decorian Moore can't even get close to that based on year 1. Obviously, we can talk about the injuries and stuff like that, but I've already talked about it, and Andy did a good job of talking about, like, even without the injuries, he was getting beat out by other players, and not even necessarily players that we love, because we talk about how Kenyon Sadiq was getting beat out by other players. So like they're all getting beat out by everyone, and I don't know. I think that he's another overhyped player. Unfortunately, it happens quite a bit. Unfortunately, it seems to happen quite a bit at Oregon, where at least they end up at Oregon. Obviously Evan Stewart's another one where he was considered the wide receiver 1 in his own class at one point, and people are still trying to hype him up, and yet he's literally done nothing over a 4-year college career, maybe even 8-year college career at this point. I don't know. He seems to be pretty old, and he's never done anything, but then there's our good friend Luther Burden, and so I'm sitting here trying to, I've never given Luther Burden any credit whatsoever, but I think I'm going to do it right now. And I think I'm going to put Luther Burden ahead of Decorian Moore, because we've already seen him get drafted early in the second round. We've already seen him, put up okay stats in the NFL. And obviously we know how people feel about him right now, value-wise, dynasty value-wise, even if it's absolutely ridiculous. I don't know that Decorian Moore is ever going to hit any of those levels. And so I feel like, as is right now, I'm leaning towards Cam Coleman by a mile. You have your 1, and then you have your 3A and 3B, and that is Decorian Moore, or I'm sorry, Luther Burden and Decorian Moore. See, my mind didn't even want to let me actually do it, but I'm going to put Luther Burden at 3A and Decorian Moore at 3B. That being said, Luther Burden is going to disappoint a lot of people this year.
Okay. This time I'm going to side with, drum roll, John this time. Yes. And just at least with the ranking itself, maybe slightly different feelings with, the extent of this or that with Luther Burden, right? And Decory Moore. I don't dislike those players by any means, but I do think that Cam Coleman possesses that combination of very good size, athleticism, great situation this year at Texas, and yeah, I think he's a very complete prospect coming out next year. Should prove a lot of things this season. And Luther Burden, I will put next. Yep, at number 2 as well. Just with the opportunity there, like one of the best coaching situations for Luther Burden to just thrive and get lots of targets, touches. Is he going to be a great, well-balanced, downfield threat, the most nuanced and advanced receiver out there? No, but that's fine. He doesn't need to be Rashee Rice year after year, getting funnel targets, playmaking ability displayed out there. Luther Burden has that. And then Decory Moore at 3. Definitely some upside at Oregon, but you guys already touched on like some of the risks there at Oregon, whether you want to call out, maybe questionable quarterback play, system, translation, development of that talent, or just the fact that Decory Moore didn't do quite enough as a freshman. He did some things, but didn't dominate necessarily at the college level quite yet. So I still like Decory Moore, but I'll put him at 3 as well. So that was a good debate there on them. Now, I won't take too long here. I want to get at least another grouping in, if that's all right. And I'm going to go with one guy from this freshman class, the rookie class here. And then I'm going to go with the guy who was, just 2 different freshmen, actually, from this last year. So Casey Concepcion, drafted in the first round by the by the Browns. And then we have De'Aaron Hill for Oregon Ducks, and Malachi Toney for the Miami Hurricanes. So different positions here, but a couple wide receivers and one running back option. Casey Concepcion, De'Aaron Hill, Malachi Toney.
All right, that's another tricky one. I feel like people are gonna really, especially the Devy elite will not like this call from me, but I think Malachi Toney, like, he wants to be Casey Concepcion. Like, that's the career pathway that he needs to follow. So for that reason, I'm putting KC ahead of Malachi Toney because he's already done it and he's turned it around. He's turned it from being this underneath, low ADOT player to a dynamic, if you want to call him X receiver, he's kind of just a hybrid. He can do it all now from what we saw last year at Texas A&M. De'Aaron Hill, I love De'Aaron Hill a lot. He's playing with Jordan Davison. So to me, I feel like we're in like this coin flip situation where one of them probably ends up being the lead back for the team, but also in like Devy, like the one that people are like, okay, this is the guy that we are confident is going to be a day 2 pick in the NFL. He's going to start for an NFL team immediately. And I can't say, with conviction that that's definitely De'Aaron Hill or over Jordan Davison. So for that reason, I'm going to put De'Aaron Hill at 3 because I know Malachi Toney had, kind of a one-dimensional season, but it was a spectacular season nonetheless. Like, from a production standpoint, it was very good. He's getting a big quarterback upgrade with Mensa. He's getting more competition, though, in his own depth chart with Cooper Barcade joining the team. So it'll be interesting to see how Toney adapts. It's weird to say that because he's the one that's staying on the same team, but he really does have to adapt to these new parts to the offense that he's now a part of. So I'm gonna put him at 2. I'm putting Casey at 1 because that's who Malachi Toney is striving to be. Hopefully a better version of Casey Concepcion when it's all said and done, but he's not there yet. And then De'Aaron Hill, for the reasons I mentioned, I can't say with 100% conviction that he's going to be the Oregon running back that we all need to have on our Devy rosters in 1 year.
Man, first you let me get De'Aaron Hill Jr. in our Devy draft, and now you put him at 3. Honestly did not see this coming in the year of our Lord 2026 from our good friend Andy Starr. Man, oh man, oh man. He used to be the biggest De'Aaron Hill fan, and now look where we're at. I was honestly very surprised when that everyone was going off the board. Not to get too heavy into our Devy draft, but everyone was going off the board. Jordan Davison goes at the beginning of the second round. Obviously, I'm sitting there at pick 12 for obvious reasons, championships and whatnot. But I'm sitting there and just waiting. I'm like, who am I going to get? Who's still going to be available? Bam, De'Aaron Hill Jr. Like, who could have thunk it? I can't imagine.
I think I was surprised because Xavier Crowell was still there in the second round, and I didn't have a Crowell share yet, so I kind of fell over myself putting the pick in that I didn't even really look to see who else was available. So that was my bad, but at the same time, maybe it works out for me.
No, honestly, it'll probably work out for you. 4 years from now, I think everything's going to be just great. Obviously, I've won some more championships at that point. But getting back to the point here, Casey Concepcion, De'Aaron Hill Jr., Malachi Toney. I'm going to agree with you that Casey Concepcion is who Malachi Toney dreams about at night. That's who he wants to be. Honestly, if it ends up being the same exact thing where year 1 was gadgety, year 2 kind of grows a little bit, and then year 3 he explodes and becomes a true player, then I'll give Malachi Toney all credit in the world. But right now, what we're seeing is a truly gadgety player, a la what we saw at year 1 Casey Concepcion. So it's hard to see. Obviously, he hit even different levels than what Concepcion hit, and he did it at Miami, which is, you have to give him a little bit of credit. But he also had a 6th-year quarterback who just wanted to dink and dunk the ball, and obviously was just throwing him the ball. So, it's kind of one of those weird things where you have this overly experienced quarterback and this really underexperienced player. And so what does he do? He just throws him the ball right around the line of scrimmage. Hey, go, use your athleticism. And so we'll have to see if he can become more than that. De'Aaron Hill Jr. has grown on me. I've seen the explosiveness. I've seen the athleticism that people were excited about. My biggest thing when he was coming out was that he was listed at 185 pounds when he was first coming out. Supposedly he's at 206 or something like that right now. I don't know how exactly that happens without without eating some hamburgers and slowing you down, but yet supposedly that hasn't happened. I've been the Malachi Toney hater. Malachi Toney is just so overrated. So I'm going to go ahead and just put my stamp of disapproval here. And I'm going to say Casey Concepcion 1, De'Aaron Hill Jr. at 2. Malachi Toney has a lot of work to do to prove anything to me, just like Casey Concepcion had to do it. And he did. So it is possible. But I need to see some pretty big steps forward from Malachi Toney before I ever believe in him. Otherwise, we're going to be having the same exact conversation about him being the next Luther Burden who got all excited. People got all excited about in year 2 of the NFL, and then he completely fell off and was in the UFL after that.
Yeah, I think I knocked it out of the park with this one as far as just being a challenging one. I do not know how to tackle this ranking because I think both of you guys made pretty convincing arguments. And for the record there, Andy, I think that taking Crowell there, the Alabama freshman running back over De'Aaron Hill, have no issues with that. Obviously, De'Aaron being a little bit more proven, but more of that traditional workhorse type of running back, that's Crowell. But in this question at hand, I do think that, yes, John is correct. Malachi Toney did more impressive things as a freshman than Casey Concepcion did as a freshman. He's going to need some steps, take some development. I think he gets there with Darian Mensah. He has a lot of valuable skills that should translate to the NFL level. It's just, will he be a well-rounded, more downfield threat type of wide receiver? That's to be determined. Does he take that Casey Concepcion leap? I don't know. But I do think he has a better upside than Concepcion. I do think Concepcion's upside is a little bit limited, and I don't love the Browns landing spot, I'll be honest. De'Aaron Hill, I do like the landing spot there. He'll split carries this year, but I think De'Aaron Hill is a super talented back, explosive, capable receiving option, enough burst, wiggle, etc. I really do like his game. So when it's all said and done, Casey Concepcion, yeah, you got first round draft capital there. I think I'm going to default to that as the safe option, right? I went with that route earlier for Fernando Mendoza. I think there's going to be some value insulation there. Then I'm going to go De'Aaron Hill. Then I'm going to go Malachi Toney. But that's just I mean, I was hyping up Malachi Toney to start with. That's how challenging this was for me. It's like I still want to give him some credit for the impressive freshman season he had and the leaps that he could take. He could easily become that one out of this group. But at where things stand right now, I think I agree with you guys. He has to be a little bit lower in that grouping.
I mean, maybe I'm being like baffled by C2C ranks and stuff like that, but this just seems so wild. I mean, I know obviously we're not your normal or your consensus ranks and whatever from Devy, but it just seems like obviously people love Malachi Toney, so just the fact that we're putting him here at 3 almost seems like insane. But honestly, I think it's right. I really do, and it's not just it's not just for clicks or whatever. It's just, I mean, he has a lot to prove. I think that's the God honest truth.
I like it, and that's all I got for you guys. I mean, we could go a lot longer if we really wanted to. Come up with some other interesting names, but I think we did a combination of intermixed position there at the end, plus some good positional groups: wide receiver, running back, and quarterback.
All right, so I just got to get this one. I actually brought something up to the upper levels of DLF, and I said, hey, I'm looking at the Cornerstone ranks, and they're just not something's bothering me here. I'm looking at the Cornerstone ranks, I'm looking at the rookie ranks, I'm looking at our dynasty ranks, including rookies, and something's not matching up. And they said, let's look into it. We'll let you know if we're going to make any changes. And they came back and said, hey, look, like we like having different thinkers, different rankers, and they're going to rank the way they want to rank, and so on and so forth. I said, all right, cool. So that's fine. That's the way DLF wants to do it. But as of right now, DLF Cornerstone Rankings has Cam Ward at QB1, Jackson Dart at QB2, Fernando Mendoza at QB3, and Arch Manning at QB4. So how are we? I will take a step back on this one, and I will allow you guys to decide. Obviously, we've already touched on a couple of these names here, but how are we doing Cam Ward, Jackson Dart, Fernando Mendoza, and Arch Manning here?
Well, I think that Cam Ward probably needs to shuffle down there a little bit. I mean, drop a little bit in those ranks. Other than that, I mean, that's kind of an exciting group there, and I don't disagree with Dart being near at the very top with it. I just think that Ward, we talked about the risk earlier. Yes, maybe there's a bit of safety banked in if we're taking these guys right now. In drafts, for example, maybe you do still have Ward ahead of Arch Manning, but that was not consensus with tonight's pod. So other than the Ward thing, yeah, I think I'm okay with that.
I mean, we just did this essentially, except now we're adding Jackson Dart into the mix. So I think I had it Arch, Ward, Mendoza, and I kind of said like between Ward and Mendoza, I'm not very happy with either of those guys. And then I would put Jackson Dart at number 1 right now in front of Arch Manning because he was an amazing pro prospect in college. He was underrated going into the NFL draft, and I think he proved everybody wrong last year. Just from a points per game standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, I think like the Giants feel like they're actually moving in the right direction for a change, and it's because of Jackson Dart. So yeah, I would put him at number 1 in all of those guys. And then, like I said, we've already talked about the other 3, and I don't really care about the third and the fourth. It just, to me, it just feels like I'd have Dart number 1, Arch number 2, and then between Ward and Mendoza, I'm just not very confident in either of them.
Yeah, well, I think that was what bothered me the most is because, saying that they're QB 1, 2, 3, and 4 is one thing, but when you actually look at the rankings, Cam Ward is the 4th overall player, Jackson Dart is the 8th overall player, Arch is the 11th, or Mendoza is the 10th, and Arch is the 11th. And so when you look at it that way, it seems like Cam Ward is like leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else, and that's where I start going, man, I don't know what's going on here. Trust me, I like Cam Ward too. I don't know that I like him that much, especially after seeing what he did year one. It just kind of blew my mind. But it seems like I'm definitely not calling anyone out per se, at least by name. But there's one person in particular that really does not like Jackson Dart, and they have him very low. And unfortunately, that's kind of killing his rank there. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, there's some stuff up in the air with Dart, and if he's going to be 100% healthy, his neighbor's going to be 100% healthy, that kind of stuff. So I guess we have to wait and see. Nothing is set in stone yet, but it was just an interesting one. I figured I would kind of throw Dart into that mix that we already talked about. But this is a lot of fun. Obviously, I know people love the Cornerstone ranks. It's not as easy as you think. When you actually start sitting down and trying to rank these players and figure out where you would put them into your ranks, like it sounds so easy until you actually sit down and do it. So if you ever get a chance to, I would recommend just try to figure it out. Don't go crazy, but take 10 players and say like, I'm gonna try and rank these 10 players or 20 players or whatever, and just see like once you actually start nitpicking and stuff, you go, man, this is not as easy as you might think. So it's fun. That's why we try to discuss all the angles and everything. So even if you don't necessarily agree with the rank, at least maybe you agree with the actual analysis of why we're putting a player there and that kind of stuff. But Aaron, I guess it was your idea, your show idea here. So do you have any words of wisdom for us before we get out of here?
You could call it words of wisdom, words of encouragement, or otherwise, but go check out those Cornerstone ranks. I'm very intrigued to see how some of the running backs fall out. We didn't have a lot of NFL running back discussion here tonight on the pod, so I would just check out that resource. They already have it all put together for you, and you obviously can come up with your own thoughts and opinions on that. But that's a great way to do it. Otherwise, reach out to us. We're always happy to help you navigate these things in your league.
Ooh, real quick, Basil Tootin or Kewan Lacey?
Well,
Tootin.
I mean, Tootin as well, yeah, because I had Ahmad Hardy barely ahead, and I'm definitely higher on Hardy compared to Lacey.
I like it, and that's actually how DLF has it. It's Basil Tootin right ahead of Kewan Lacey, but I don't know, that doesn't sound like it would be consensus. But once again, actually Cornerstone ranking is a different animal than regular ranking, Devy ranking, whatever else. So we appreciate you guys listening. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. We will obviously be back in your ears, hopefully with all of the hosts. Once again, we'll keep the team together and all be our favorite hosts, favorite best friends, and all that kind of good stuff. But we appreciate you guys listening. We will be back in your ears as soon as possible. Make sure you're liking and subscribing. Make sure you're checking out the Gridiron Ratings YouTube channel so you can join us for the live stream. We didn't have anybody join us tonight, and we are sad because of it. So make sure that we are happy next week and we hear from you. And until then, we're cashing out. We'll see you guys later.